Welcome to True Crime Cases, where we delve into the darkest corners of human nature. Next Tech Solutions was headquartered in the business district of Chicago, Illinois. The company's founder and CEO, 40-year-old Daryl Rose, was considered one of the most successful entrepreneurs in the information technology industry. His journey to success began 16 years ago when he founded a small startup that eventually grew into a multi-million-dollar corporation. Daryl was known for his charisma and business acumen. A tall trimman with shrewd gray eyes and a confident smile, he easily put people at ease. His manner of dress, always in impeccably fitting suits, emphasized the status of a successful businessman. Daryl. Personal life seemed to be as successful as his career. He was married to Amina Rose, a 38-year-old woman known in Chicago social circles. Amina, a former model and now owner of a chain of high-end spas, was a bright and ambitious person. Her long blonde hair and graceful figure still attracted attention, and her sharp mind and business acumen made her respected spouses. Rose were married for 13 years and at first glance represented the perfect couple. They often appeared together at various social events, showing others the image of a happy family. However, behind the facade of well-being HID problems that only the two of them knew about recently, Amina began to notice changes in her husband's behavior. Daryl was increasingly delayed at work, becoming irritable and distant. His explanations about important projects and meetings with clients no longer seemed convincing. Amina's intuition told her that her husband was hiding something. Unwilling to accept her growing suspicions, Amina decided to take action. She turned to Sharpie Investigations, a private detective agency known for its discretion and professionalism. The agency's owner, former police detective Holly Smith, listened carefully to Amina's story and offered an unconventional solution. One of the best agents, 30-year-old Lyric, was selected to investigate. Lyric had a background in the FBI and was known for her analytical mind and ability to infiltrate any environment. Her task was to get a job at Daryl Rose's company and gather evidence of his possible infidelity. Lyric prepared thoroughly for her role. She created an impeccable resume, highlighting her skills and experience working for major technology companies. Her appearance, brown hair, green eyes, and understated style and clothes perfectly matched the image of a professional executive assistant. Thus, the stage was set for the start of a complex game in which each participant pursued his or her own goals. Daryl Rose, unaware of the coming events, was preparing for another day of work. Amina, driven by a mixture of suspicion and hope for error, waited for the results of the investigation, and Lyric, armed with her skills and experience, was preparing to enter the world of high technology and big business. Neither of them could have guessed what unexpected twists and turns lay ahead, and how this story would change their lives. A crime that had not yet been committed had already begun to take shape in the shadows of suspicion and mistrust. Amina Rose sat in her home office, absent-mindedly flipping through the pages of a glossy magazine. Her thoughts were far removed from fashion trends and society news. For weeks now, she'd had an uneasy feeling that something was wrong with her marriage. It had started with little things. Daryl was staying late at work more often. His phone was now password protected, and conversations about company business were becoming more evasive. Amina, with her sharp mind and intuition, couldn't ignore these changes. She recalled their last conversation when she had tried to discuss with her husband his late homecoming. Daryl had brushed it off, citing an important project and an increased workload. His explanation sounded logical, but something in his tone made Amina question it. The decision to contact the detective agency hadn't come easily to her. Struggled with herself for a long time, not wanting to admit that she no longer trusted her husband. However, after a sleepless night, she decided that the truth, no matter how bitter it was better than the agonizing unknown. Sharpie Investigations was not chosen by chance. Amina carefully studied the market of private detective services in Chicago and decided on a company with an impeccable reputation and an impressive track record. The deciding factor was the recommendation of her friend who had already used the services of the agency in a similar situation. At the office of Sharpie Investigations, Amina was met by the owner himself, Holly Smith. His attentive gaze and professional calmness immediately gave her confidence. Amina detailed her suspicions, trying to remain objective and not jump to conclusions. Smith listened attentively to the client, asking clarifying questions. He did not jump to conclusions, but he did not try to dissuade Amina from her suspicions. Instead, he suggested an unconventional approach to the investigation. Mrs. Rose Smith said, given your husband's position and the sensitivity of the situation, I suggest we use the deep intrusion method. We can arrange for one of our best agents to work for your husband's company. This will allow us to gather more complete and reliable information. Amina hesitated. The idea seemed risky yet effective. Is it safe? She asked. I don't want anyone to get hurt, or for Daryl Company's reputation to be jeopardized. Smith assured her that the agency was operating with the utmost discretion and confidentiality. Our agent will act solely within the confines of the law, collecting only the information that pertains to your request, he explained. After a long discussion of the details, Amina agreed to the proposed plan Smith presented her with the file of Lyric, the agent who was to infiltrate Daryl Company. Lyric's professional experience and her successful operations in the past impressed Amina. Leaving the agency's office, Amina had mixed feelings. On the one hand, she was glad that she had finally taken concrete steps to resolve her doubts. On the other, she was tormented by guilt for invading her husband's privacy. In this way, back at home, Amina tried to act as normal as possible. She didn't want Daryl to suspect anything. In the evening, when her husband returned from work, she greeted him with a smile, hiding behind it a storm of emotion and doubts. That night, Amina couldn't sleep for a long time. She looked at Daryl sleeping next to her and thought about how they had come to this point in their relationship. Once upon a time, they had trusted each other unconditionally. What had changed, and was she ready for the truth, whatever it turned out to be? Meanwhile, across town, Lyric was preparing for her new mission. She was researching information about Next Tech Solutions, its structure and key employees. Lyric realized that she had a daunting task ahead of her, not only to gather information, but also to maintain her cover in the highly competitive environment of a technology company. The plan was set in motion. Now the only thing left to do was to wait to see what secrets this investigation would uncover and what consequences it would lead to. Monday morning at the Next Tech Solutions office began as usual. Employees rushed to their desks. Greetings and the clinking of coffee cups could be heard in the hallways. Daryl Rose arrived at the office earlier than usual. He was preparing for an important interview. The company needed a new personal assistant to the manager at 900. Lyric appeared in the reception area. She was dressed in a strict business suit, her hair gathered in a neat bundle. Her resume was in a leather folder, and her eyes read the confidence of a professional. Daryl met Lyric in his office. He took a quick look at her, noting her impressive work experience at major technology company. Miss Lyric, he began, your resume looks promising. Tell us why you decided to change jobs. Lyric was ready for the question. She told a pre-prepared story about her desire for professional growth and her interest in Next Tech Solutions, innovative projects. Her answers were clear and compelling, demonstrating a deep understanding of the industry. Daryl was impressed. He asked a few technical questions which Lyric answered without hesitation. Her knowledge and confidence impressed him. Miss Lyric, he said, at the end of the interview, I think you're exactly the person we need. When can you start work? I'm ready to start immediately, Mr. Rose, Lyric replied with a smile. The very next day, Lyric began her duties. She quickly settled into the office, getting to know the staff and learning the company's internal processes. Her efficiency and professionalism did not go unnoticed. After a week, Daryl entrusted her to work with confidential documents. Lyric carefully documented her every step, every observation. She noticed Daryl frequent phone calls, which had preferred to make behind closed doors. Several times she noticed him quickly closing browser tabs when she appeared in the office. Once, while staying late at the office, Lyric had witnessed a strange conversation. Daryl was on the phone, lowering his voice. No, honey, we can't make it tonight. Amina suspects something. Let's meet tomorrow at the usual place. It was the first serious hint of possible infidelity. Lyric sent regular reports to the agency, which were then passed on to Amina. She tried to be objective without jumping to conclusions. However, every day, the evidence grew more and more. Daryl, meanwhile, was growing to trust his new assistant more and more. He appreciated Lyric's professionalism and her ability to keep her mouth shut. One day, He even invited her to a business dinner with an important client. That dinner became a key moment in the investigation. After meeting with a client, Dariel offered Lyric a drink in the hotel bar under the influence of alcohol. He became more candid. "You know, Lyric," he said, looking into her eyes, "sometimes I think you're the only person who really understands me." Lyric skillfully kept the conversation flowing. Without crossing professional boundaries, she realized that Dariel was on the verge of revealing his secrets. However, at the last moment he seemed to come to his senses and hurriedly said goodbye, citing the late hour the next day at the office. Dariel behaved as if nothing had happened, but Lyric noticed that he kept his eyes on her more often, finding reasons to talk to her in private. She realized she was walking on thin ice. Any mistake could blow her cover and derail the investigation. Meanwhile, Amina Rose eagerly awaited each new report from the detective agency. She scrutinized every detail, trying to piece together a complete picture of what was going on. Her suspicions were growing, but she still hoped for a mistake. A month into the operation, Lyric had gathered enough circumstantial evidence of Dariel infidelity. However, there was still no direct evidence. She realized that she needed to act more decisively to get hard evidence. In her next report to the agency, Lyric suggested that she move to more action. She sensed that Dariel was close to making a crucial mistake. All that remained was to create the right conditions. It had been 2 months since Lyric had been introduced to Next Tech Solutions. In that time, she had become an indispensable employee to Dariel Rose, gaining access to much of his work and personal schedule. Now it was time for more drastic action. Lyric devised a plan that would provoke Dariel into candor. She began to hint at her interest in him by creating situations where they were alone together. Dariel seemed flattered by the attention of the young and attractive assistant. One evening, when most of the staff had gone home, Lyric walked into Dariel's office with documents requiring his signature. She deliberately leaned in, closer than necessary, ostensibly to point out important clauses in the contract. Dariel was visibly nervous, his gaze darting between Lyric's face and the office door. Lyric huffily said, coughing, "I appreciate your work, but please let's keep things professional." His voice sounded uncertain, as if he was trying to convince not so much Lyric as himself. Lyric feigned embarrassment and hastily apologized as she left the office. She mentally noted Jam's reaction. He hadn't rejected her outright, which could indicate his willingness to have an extramarital relationship. The next day, Lyric noticed that Dariel had received a text message that made him nervous. He quickly deleted it and looked around, checking to see if anyone had noticed his reaction. Lyric pretended to be completely absorbed in her work. An hour later, Dariel announced that he had an unscheduled meeting with a client and would be out for the rest of the day. Lyric knew it was a lie. There were no meetings on his schedule. She decided to take advantage of the situation. As soon as Dariel left the office, Lyric activated special software on his work computer installed early. Under the guise of a security update, the program allowed her to remotely view his browser and message history. What she discovered confirmed Amina's worst suspicions. Dariel had been corresponding with a woman named Laura. The messages were full of romantic promises and plans for secret rendezvous. Lyric made copies of the correspondence and sent them to the agency. Meanwhile, she decided to follow Dariel. Using the GPS tracker installed on his company car, Lyric set out on the trail. The trail led her to As-salamu restaurant in the Chicago suburbs. Parking nearby, Lyric watched as Dariel met up with a young woman. They hugged and kissed before entering their restaurant. Lyric took a few pictures, trying to remain unnoticed. Back at the office, Lyric compiled a detailed report of her findings. She realized that the information could ruin the Rose's marriage, but her job was to provide facts, not judge Amina. Rose received the report the next day. Reading it, she felt the ground go from under her feet. Her suspicions were confirmed, and now she had irrefutable proof of her husband's infidelity. For several days, Amina was in a state of shock. She did not know what to do with this information. On the one hand, she wanted to denounce Dariel immediately, but on the other hand, she was afraid of ruining her life and reputation. After much deliberation, Amina decided to proceed cautiously. She didn't confront her husband immediately mentally, but instead asked the agency to continue surveillance. She wanted to know how serious Jam's relationship with this Laura was. Lyric continued her work at the company, Now that she had clear confirmation of Daryl infidelity, she noticed that he had become even more cautious, checking his phone and computer more often for surveillance. One day, Daryl almost caught Lyric looking at his email. She barely had time to close the window when he unexpectedly returned to the office. The incident made her realize how risky her mission had become. Meanwhile, Amina began gathering information on the financial status of Daryl Company. She suspected that her husband might have been hiding some of the income in preparation for a possible divorce. This information could be crucial in the event of a lawsuit. Lyric was given a new assignment: to find evidence of Daryl financial fraud, if any. This made her task more difficult, but she was up to the challenge. The investigation had entered a new, more dangerous phase. Now the stakes were higher and the risks more serious. Lyric realized that any mistake could not only derail the operation but also have serious legal consequences. The investigation had entered a critical phase. Lyric, still working undercover at Next Tech Solutions, focused on finding evidence of Daryl Rose's possible financial fraud. This task proved considerably more difficult than the previous one. Daryl, despite his personal indiscretion in his relationship with Laura, was extremely prudent in financial matters. All the documents to which Lyric had access seemed impeccable. However, her experience told her that if there were irregularities, they must be hidden somewhere. One day, while reviewing the quarterly reports, Lyric noticed a slight discrepancy in the figures. The amount was insignificant, but it was regularly repeated. From quarter to quarter, she began digging deeper, analyzing the company's financial flows. Meanwhile, Amina Rose was in a state of internal conflict. The knowledge of her husband's infidelity was eating away at her from the inside, but she was still hesitant to confront him openly. Instead, she began to prepare for a possible divorce. Consulting with lawyers and financial advisors one evening, as Lyric lingered in the office, she overheard a conversation between Daryl and an unknown man. The voices came from the conference room. Lyric cautiously approached the door, trying to hear the gist of the conversation. "Daryl, you can't take that risk. If this gets out, we'll both end up behind bars," spoke an unfamiliar voice. "Calm down, Alex. Everything is under control. No one will suspect anything," Daryl replied, but you could feel the tension in his voice. Lyric quickly backed away from the door as the conversation began to fade. She made it around the corner before Daryl and his companion exited the conference room. After catching a glimpse of the stranger, Lyric memorized his face for further investigation the next day. Lyric began searching for information on this Alex. She looked through the company's lists of employees, partners, and clients, but found no one by that name. This heightened her suspicions as Lyric continued to analyze the financial records. She found a series of small transactions to offshore accounts. The amounts were insignificant, but combined, they amounted to an impressive figure. She began to map out these transactions, trying to find a connection to the mysterious Alex. Suddenly, the investigation took an unexpected turn. Looking through old photos from corporate events, Lyric recognized Alexei was in several of the pictures, but nowhere was he signed using facial recognition software. She was able to identify him as Alexander Volkov, a Russian businessman with a questionable reputation. This discovery changed the entire course of the investigation. It wasn't just about adultery or petty financial fraud anymore. Daryl's connection to Volkov could point to much more serious crimes, perhaps even industrial espionage or money laundering. Lyric contacted the agency immediately, reporting her findings. The decision was made to inform not only Amina, but law enforcement as well. The case was taking on a federal dimension. Amina was shocked by the news. Cheating on her husband now seemed petty compared to the possible felonies. She agreed to cooperate with the authorities by providing all the information she had. The FBI began its own investigation, but asked Lyric to continue working undercover. Now she was not only to gather information for Amina, but also to assist federal agents. Daryl, unaware of the threat hanging over him, continued to lead a double life. He was still dating Laura while trying to smooth things over with Amina, who was becoming increasingly distant. Lyric found herself in a difficult situation. She had to continue to play the role of Daryl's loyal assistant while gathering evidence against him. Every day she risked being exposed. The situation was escalating. Daryl became more nervous and suspicious. He began to check on his employees, fearing information leaks. Lyric realized she didn't have much time left one evening as Lyric was copying another batch of documents from Daryl computers. She heard footsteps in the hallway. Her heart sank. She barely had time to close all the files and pretend to work on her report when the door opened. Standing on the threshold was Daryl. His gaze was cold and penetrating. "Lyric," he said slowly, "we need to talk." Lyric felt a chill run down her spine. Daryl's gaze did not bode well. She tried to remain calm and replied, "Of course, Mr. Rose. What did you want to talk about?" Daryl closed the door and slowly walked over to Lyric's desk. "I've noticed some inconsistencies in the latest reports. Would you mind explaining them?" Lyric realized this was a test. She quickly ran through all her actions over the last few days in her head, trying to figure out where she might have made a mistake. "Inconsistencies?" she asked again. Buying time. "I'm not quite sure what you're talking about. Can you clarify?" Daryl began to explain, pointing to specific figures in the reports. Lyric was relieved to realize that they were just routine accounting errors, unrelated to her investigation. She quickly found an explanation for each discrepancy, citing technical glitches and human error. Daryl seemed satisfied with her explanations. He left, however. He dropped a phrase that made Lyric tense. "By the way, do you know why our security system detected strange activity on my computer last night?" Lyric realized her time was running out. She immediately contacted the agency and the FBI, reporting her suspicions. The decision was made to expedite the operation the next morning. Daryl Rose was arrested right in the Nextech Solutions office. FBI agents seized computers and company documents. Lyric was finally able to reveal her true identity. The FBI investigation confirmed all suspicions. Daryl was indeed involved in a complex money laundering scheme through offshore companies. His connection to Alexander Volov proved to be the key to uncovering an international criminal network. Amina Rose was shocked by the extent of her husband's crime. She filed for divorce and agreed to cooperate with the investigation by providing all the information she knew about Daryl finances. Laura, Daryl's mistress, turned out to be more than just a casual liaison. She was part of a criminal scheme helping to launder money through a chain of high-end restaurants and hotels. Daryl Rose's trial was one of the most high-profile cases of the year. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison for financial crimes and aiding and abetting money laundering. Nextech Solutions was on the verge of bankruptcy. Its reputation was hopelessly damaged. Its stock plummeted. Thousands of employees were in danger of being fired. Amina, despite all the turmoil, managed to keep her business alive. She used her experience to set up a charity to help victims of financial crime. Lyric was promoted within the agency for a successful operation. However, the undercover experience left a deep mark on her soul. She decided to take a vacation to rethink her life and career. Alexander Volov managed to escape before the arrest began. He is on an international wanted list, but his traces are lost somewhere in Eastern Europe. This story has been the subject of numerous investigative journalists and books. It has raised questions about corporate ethics, financial control, and personal morality in the business environment for everyone involved in this drama. Life will never be the same again. Daryl has lost everything: his family, his business, his freedom. Amina started a new life trying to forget her husband's betrayal. Thanks for watching True Crime Cases.